but I think you can do
the real threat, yeah. Okay. Okay, why do I see you? And no Geshe-la. Geshe is on the side.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. That's it. Yeah, what about prayers?
Yeah.
You display them on the screen or something?
Mengereje.
Okay.
Ange jodan so we jona na ja yo ba do da ne ja so che da le so la ben ba ni so ge jodan so we jona ja yo ba do da ne ja so ge jodan so we jona na ja yo ba do da ne ja kange do zinye sun ta wa tan je ba me che da me chu na do ko dam de la cha ze.
Thank you. May I just do some introductions before we officially start? I'd just like to say I'm Lynn. I'm the spiritual program coordinator here at Jamyang Leeds, and I have the great honour this evening of welcoming Khen Rinpoche Geshe Jamphel, the Abbot of Nalanda Monastery. He's a great scholar and practitioner who's been teaching at Nalanda and across Europe for many years, including teaching both the basic and master's programs. And he brings a profound knowledge, but also humour and a rare way of presenting the Buddha's Dharma, which makes us think and question our own thoughts and understanding. So we're very honoured that he's agreed to give us these teachings on the lamrim this evening and over the next few weeks. And even though circumstances dictate that we have to be online at the moment, we also invite Khen Rinpoche to return to Leeds in person in future. And I'd also like to welcome Ventarchin, who's Nalanda's senior translator. He's been translating for Geshe Jamphel for over 20 years and has just completed his time translating the master's program. And we also have with us this evening, although I don't think we can see her at the moment, Venerable Irene, who I would like to thank very, very much for all her help in setting up this teaching. And having said that, I shall hand over so that we can start this evening proper. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Today, Prasangika da diri ngan dela da thangpures. Sida indi samala da karsure. Ale ning tawane den tash tele shwe chikta din same kunu yawo chikene nganzo penzu niga ge che shenya da ge gyungye da chunyenye da same kunu yawo chikeja mona nganzo da dare 조지 Atisha zebe dine changju langi drama di ma shere din din jaba benjolo san chegi genzeng zeba sun di tona din ma dishe kaze tudu chi che ni din samala phendo nyoya ge rawa shweje jazan dine wo dine se ale tambo chamdi tashi tele mango shugi right.
So Geshe wants to start by saying that this is, of course, the first time we come together here. This is the first session of this teachings, and we see each other for the first time in some time. So first of all, he wants to greet everybody from the bottom of his heart with a heartfelt Tashi Delek, and he wants to ask everybody to also engage in these teachings with a very good motivation. So both Geshe himself teaching this text and also us listening to this text should do this with a very good motivation, because this is really an outstanding text by the great master Jobu Atisha, the actual root text. So we are listening to the Lamp on the Path to Enlightenment by Atisha, but then also Geshe will teach this Lamp on the Path of Jobu Atisha by way of a commentary by the Pension Losang Chögyel. So he will rely on that commentary. So both of these texts are very, very precious. So therefore, we should have a very positive and strong, good motivation. Both Geshe talks about himself, both him teaching these texts and also listening to these instructions.
네, 방아저드나 레라보여나? 드네 냥아저드나 바강샤바데 키랑저모네야. 전다데 가르시기여라 세트워테요나. 와, 엔데지 러브스 디 전다다 가르라고여라 슬라이 여바이나 야보샤라여라 세트워테요나. 방아저나레 다다지나 참참 드주 참아베 초진이 숨지 도저냐 뒤제 되그레스. 와다 지나 다 조til에 지기지 여바이나 야고여레스. 다레데 가저데 초칭내잖아 수수게 나도 최신행기 문에 지기 다 람상보식 파르야지 타바도 탄지 김벽 고만 줘야지 초신행기는 따바이나 나라도 내주도 시고야지 일라 당보 냠니 제발라 시 마시나 되니 냠니 제 민두스 최근에서 마시나 냠니 제야 전 최근에서도 시고를 시발라 조til에 제디 계시무셔기 잘했어.
Geshe also wants to mention that it can happen that at times there is questions coming up, or people have doubts, or want to share something, and Geshe is strongly encouraging that, because also here at Nalanda, through all these different BPs and MPs that the Geshe was teaching different programs, the BP and MP, we were at times spending a whole session just on Geshe taking questions and then us discussing them, and we could come up with follow-up questions and so forth. But Geshe strongly wants to encourage that. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to ask them. And this very study that we do here, on the one hand, of course, we could say all of this is about that we want to become enlightened, liberated, or enlightened. But on a more, how you say, technical note, you could say the first step that we need to do is we need to learn, we need to know, we need to understand the Dharma, because if we do not know the Dharma, if you don't understand the Dharma, you cannot put it into practice. There's no practice without first studying the Dharma or listening to the Dharma. So therefore, here we're doing this especially as a practice of coming to know and understand the Dharma, so that we can then put it into practice.
아야, 나도지. 다되네. 다 슝디 지다 가르치기 열었으나 나라도 기부 충원 진 전부 송게 랑게를 받으 시기 열었어. 전주 랑게를 받서 다 람리 치매게 람리 치모 다 간에 중으로서나 조지 아디샤가 제가 다 람전 디네 중말했어. 자단 디네고서 셰야 데 간사 기부 충원 진 전부 송게 랑게를 받으 셰야랬어. 다 기부 충원 진 전부 라도자 간데 시간 라고 열었어. 나랑 삼아 기부로 왔어. 심지어 단체 기부로 왔어. 안데 기부 충원은 진 전부 숨스데 간데 시간을 라고 열어. 간데 시간 다 기부스게 된다 가르쳐 안에서 기부를 말해봤어. 겨우 선제 탐지했으라고 열어. 기부디 안에서 심 기부나 열어 말해봤어. 나는 기부 충원다 내 전부 숨 가롱치랑 안에서 열어 말해봤어. 어디서 저들레기 열었어.
So what we are going to look at now is this lamp on the path to enlightenment, and so this is therefore talking about the path to enlightenment, and it is going to explain the stages of the path of enlightenment. And so what are these stages? The stages of the being of the small scope, the middle scope, and the great scope. Yeah. So these different stages of the path that are referring to this respective beings are what this text is actually explaining, is what we are looking at. So so far we talk about the stages of the path, so Tibetan lamrim. So all these lamrim genre of a text of teachings, which is talking about the stages of the path, actually kind of start here from Jowo Atisha, and it starts with this very text here, the lamp on the path. And so again, what is the subject of this text is the stages of the path of the three types of beings, the small being, the middle being, and the great being. And so we encounter here this word being, or this word person. You could also say a person of the small scope, person of the middle scope, person of the great scope. So then the question arises: what is this person about? What is this being about? What is this trying to imply? So normally when we talk about a person, then we are all persons. We are all beings. So is that what is the person here? Are we included in this term person? And as or being, and especially then further on the question is, so if we are a being, are we one of the three beings? Are we a being of small scope, or are we one of the middle scope, or one of the great scope? So which of the three would we be? And so in general, with regard to all sentient beings, are they included in what we talk about here when we say person or being? And further on, is whoever is a sentient being also included in one of the three persons or personalities, if you would say types of spiritual practitioner, one of the three persons of the middle, the small, middle, and great scope. So this is questions we have to ask ourselves here. That's all.
Haya, that did you do? Guessing around dini, check the little John China, so Kibusungi, Nala, Tsugundu Mindu. Guess it Tsugumindu, no? So you have a top sheet like Archigin Bear, such that.
And the question is, so therefore here that we are doing now some studies, or we have already engaged in studies and so forth, though, by that have we entered into one of the three categories? Have we, by what we have done, entered into the category of being a small scope being, or middle scope being, or great scope being? And if you would say that not, we have still not entered any of these three categories, then what would we have to do in order to be subsumed in one of these three categories? So the first thing is, when we talk here about a being of the small scope, a being of the middle scope, a being of the great scope, so in order to enter into any of these categories, we first would have to understand what this even is about. Yeah? So we would have to understand what is such a being of a small scope, what is such a being of the middle scope, of the great scope, and so forth. So first of all, we would have to study and to learn about what this is actually talking about, without having any understanding about what these categories are actually expressing. We cannot possibly enter into them. Yeah, so first we need to understand what this is all about, and then we can see if we are actually fitting into any of these descriptions in any of these three categories. That's all.
Today in the Danganzo, Ranasosu, when check said the Nezu share the top sheet Majaba, you know, says Sosu Kibu, Dango check, Jima Dango de la Kibusum Lagure. Kibusung Nala, so can they do into the Hamagon? In each Chugnezu de la Tacasoreta, so did up the chair, one up chair, check me the tar, stingy others. Shava Kibusums are Takibusums the Shagodoas, Kibuchunchu than the Shagodoas. These are the parts of the Alle Chungo around the digit of the was, not even a Chugo Midu Saje. What does sound down to us?
So this is a topic about ourselves, yes, an individual analysis that we have to do here. Yeah? So first of all, we need to understand what the Dharma is talking about. When the Dharma is talking about somebody of the small scope, the middle scope, and the great scope, we first of all need to understand the Dharma. What is it saying? What is it talking about when it uses these three types of beings? And then once we have understood that, then we can check if we ourselves are actually fitting into one of these three. So the question will be, first of all, if we are fitting in the let's say, if you like, the most limited or the lowest category, yes? The absolute bottom of this threefold structure, In other words, if we have already entered into being a being of the small scope, yeah? Because if you have not entered into the small scope, you cannot possibly be in the middle scope or in the great scope. So first of all, you would have to check out that. What is the small scope about? What is the being of the small scope? Have you personally entered into that?
Ah, yeah, that was it. Then I ran or that Dangote, then I give you chungus la de da. Give you chungus at the some condition, take you chungus la we are. Give you chungus at the la. Then you need the cares, give you chungu, you need the cares la. Give you chungu de so Tango riba Dango de chill me up or something. Chiven judo, Niasong Nimi, Niasong Dungela so the last time. That the next Santane, Niasong Jiva Tamche like Gabiga Tondo like Gambru. Chigedo. Gambru Chene, Gambru Labja. Leg under Santana, Yanda Migi Chubung Children Sung. Indeji Chigengi Midila, Carasana, Sendi Lutang Barachta, Sendi Dunda, Chime Dudajan, Chime Dunadan, they get in Dangakavata. Chima Yasun the Miguel Chedo, Cambridge Yajada, Cambridge Labja, Migichu with Children Sung Yadi. Nyamnitsu Chigen the Legis. The Nyamni Chigen de la Kibu Chungsela, that's also the Tsugumindos. Not again, Tsugumindo. Near Cho made up our sound Dangido Mendo. Or Yason, you meet to get Tengi to go Tengi Mendo. The Dala Jishitan, a jobs to do good Dugumindo. I jumped to love Mikichu, children to Sung to go Sungumindo, so Joe de Gleta. To get it, you know, Rain Kibu Chumi.
Now,
What did you need the chicken? Do not so Kibu Chum that.
so first of all, we have to look at how such a being of the small scope thinks, what kind of thoughts this being is employing, what kind of practice this being is engaging in. So first of all, this person of the small scope is completely immersed into constantly thinking about the impermanence, which is death. Yeah, so impermanence in the sense of that you die, you're aging, you're dying, and you will die out of this life. And further on, this person is thinking about how after death there is the possibility that you enter into the so-called evil gone realms, in the lower realms, the lower types of rebirth, and how these types of rebirth are full of suffering. So he's actually reflecting on or keeping in mind, really has at the center of his thought, the sufferings of the lower realms that might occur after death, and that death can happen anytime. And so being aware of this, how you say, menace or danger of the sufferings of the lower realms probably being imminent, he's looking for protection from that. He looks for a refuge. So out of this understanding of death and the possible rebirth and the sufferings that are possible, he goes for refuge to the three jewels in order to have a protection or something that he can do against these dangers that are possible to come up after death. And so therefore he's then also engaging into the trainings that come out of taking refuge. Yeah? So having taken refuge, then one would put into practice teachings of that refuge. And so the training that he engages in out of his refuge would be the ethics that is abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. So somebody who is actually engaging into all of these kind of activities would be somebody of the small scope. This would be somebody who's practicing in a way that he has given up on the present life. Yeah, the present life he had let go of, and he is seeing the future lives as much more important, and tries to take care of these future lives, make sure that there's not the sufferings of the lower realms. So somebody who is practicing in this way with this kind of objective, that would be a person of the small scope. So that being understood, we then have to ask ourselves, have I personally entered into the category of being somebody of the small scope? Am I on it with regard to reflecting on death and my mortality, and that I will die, and that after death there will be other lives, and that there is a real manifest possibility that I go to the lower realms and have to experience the sufferings there? Are you reflecting on the sufferings of the lower realms? Does this generate kind of a worry in you? Does this generate, the actual word is a fear in you, out of which you then go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma Sangha? Do you have these states in your mind? Are you going for refuge to Buddha Dharma Sangha, and because of that refuge you're entering into a practice which is ethical discipline? Yeah, you discipline yourself, be an ethical person, you give up on the 10 non-virtual actions. Is that all going on in your life? Because only then are you a being of the small scope. Otherwise, you have not even entered that category. That's all. Okay. So such a person would be not so interested in the benefits coming in this life, but would be thinking especially about future lives. All the capacity of this person, his thoughts, all his spiritual capacity would go into these topics like death and mortality, and what death means, and what's happening after death, and reflecting on what these lower realms are, what's the entity, what they are about, what would be experienced there. So in other words, would be reflecting on the sufferings of those lower realms and how they are simply unbearable, and how this would be a situation which is completely unsuitable to oneself to be in any of these states of rebirth of these lower realms. And out of that concern that this might be happening in the future, being worried about that, actually having a fear with regard to these sufferings of the lower realms, one is then looking for some kind of support, somewhere that one can go to with this really existential problem. So one is looking for an object of refuge. So we would first of all need to understand what isn't refuge, what can help us. Then if we have object of refuge, we need to understand the good qualities, how and what way can they be a refuge, how to think about them so that you actually receive a refuge from that. But in the end, the question is simply, in what way do refuge jewels give you refuge or protection? And so this would in the end actually come from what is called the trainings of refuge. So in other words, practices. So there is actually a great many different types of refuge trainings or refuge practices. So we talk about, for example, a group of trainings that are concerning that you give up on certain behaviors, and others that are talking about that you take on a certain behavior. So there's a whole list of different trainings, but the main training, what it actually all comes down to, is the training in giving up the 10 non-virtuous actions. So this ethical discipline that gives up the 10 non-virtuous actions, and you could kind of subsume that in the refuge trainings of taking on a certain behavior. So that you actually practice this ethical discipline. So this is kind of the major practice then, and the way how a person of that scope, of the smallest scope, of the small scope, would think. And in this way, such a person would actually become somebody who's engaged in Dharma, an actual Dharma practitioner. Yeah, so somebody with this kind of mindset is kind of where it starts. That what your behavior or what your actions are subsumed in is in the Dharma. Yeah, so you would actually be a Dharma practitioner with this kind of state of mind from there onwards. So Geshe said that actually when we say to practice Dharma or to engage in the Dharma, Dharma is actually referring to liberation. Yeah, so there's this relation that like an entity, that Dharma is actually liberation. That already indicates that if somebody is a Dharma practitioner, then he's actually aiming at liberation. And this is why he's engaging in two practices.
기분 드인다시 값이 냠민소 가르치기로 야래슬라데 코아세들과 코라세지 가와께와 이내양 동행이랑 신진이봐. 얘라 대외랑 신싸워내 매봐. 근데 지금 내주들 경전 남자 마고 쉬고지도 않는 학과지네 시바지네. 근데 지시네 코에게 난게 따라쳐서나 디긴답지 표준소바 간대지 뭐 대탐제라배 가수라다 코에 디기디 간사 사제기 대화체래 네가 그 디기를 마다 규를 동행이라 신세래 어딘데게 규 동행이라 신세래 코아세들라 땡도 타에게 된다라 코알스 베다 탄도게 코알라 타르스를 된 인중 상바스라 코아들라 탄도게 상바고야 코아 가봐 깨놓아야나 가래라 롱체네 수다 채봐야나 다 된다 가다니 코아세 되게 나라라 사체게 근데 야나 동네래 야나 지금 사체게 대화지래 대화대양 교회 동네지래 가인스는 사체 영관을 품비 때잖아 여대래 어디데 가서더니 차바도지게 동네에서 되려와 사체 영관을 품부들이다 다 부모가들이 어디를 차바도지 동네에서 라고 동네 대대 잡아지 종윤도 다 때도 대외게 나치네 다 대외게 될라 이지체체 야마 다 된다 또 될라 이체도 이지 코아세도 나라 이지체서도 있어 이 동네랑 신이 짱냐르사 대외를 이지체도 근데 인데 삼바 덴데지 군둘라네 나라도 룡아 이송기 디벨레 탄젤라 도야가 상로치 영화 예송게 돈에 기회를 두개가 상담하지 하고서 나이 기회를 대야 가래서라도 하르바 두지 규도야지 하르베 규도야 되네 하르베 규도야 되네 기회를 두야지 나 영화 예송게 뒷바봉 와서 코르게와 나야기죠 코에 동네 용야게 뭐 대규대 봉하지 do sandango do as dendeji samba dendeji gundulane samba dendeji gundulane ta labasung nyame nyame de labasung nyame shegoya de dambashi dende yana chungni nezu dige de shene labasung nyame shigeji ro 제부 타와타에 된다. 누스가를 상담에 뭐 딘디지 쪽에디 기분 뒤있어.
So then what is a person of the middling scope? Yeah, so the person of the middling scope takes a vaster approach and looks at samsara as a whole, any kind of samsaric state or samsaric rebirth So wherever in samsara you take rebirth, wherever you are born, whatever you experience, there will always be in the nature of suffering, will not go beyond the nature of suffering. There's nothing anywhere in samsara, wherever you go, that is in the nature of happiness. Everything is in the nature of suffering. So here, this person that we're talking about here, this kind of practitioner of the middle scope, would go through a lot of reasoning and a lot of ways of thinking in order to establish that in samsara there is nothing that is of the actual nature of happiness. Everything is only in the nature of suffering, which means that whatever kind of happiness or joy you are encountering within samsara, whatever kind of how you say marvels, we can talk about the marvels of samsara, or the outstanding good conditions or special things within samsara, whatever you encounter there will always be actually in the nature of suffering and not in the nature of happiness. And so that means this is all kind of special and joy and happiness for the time being. It is a temporal state that is actually within the three types of suffering, the suffering of change. It will not last, it will change, it will be lost. And so if all what samsara has to offer is actually just the suffering of change, then out of this you come into a state of mind where you actually would like to be liberated from this kind of samsaric state. You would like to go beyond that. So if you are a person, if somebody is a person of the middle scope, then he needs to have this wish to go beyond samsara to get a state of liberation. So that person would be clear that as long as you are in samsara, wherever you go, with whomever you're together, whatever you're enjoying is only in the nature of suffering, and it doesn't go beyond that. So the person wants to get liberated from that kind of state. And what is the state in the end? The state is in the end that you're having this kind of experiences where nothing goes beyond the nature of suffering, because what you have is the contaminated five aggregates. Yeah, so these contaminated five aggregates, once you have that, then that actually in the end comes down to being in samsara and therefore never being satisfied and never going beyond the nature of suffering. So these five contaminated aggregates are what is called the pervasive compounding suffering. So as long as you're in this state, there's nothing that you can trust. Nothing is actually able to lead to happiness. Nothing is going beyond the nature of suffering. So nothing is trustworthy. So, or you cannot rely on anything, in other words. And so out of this understanding, a person of the middle scope generates an attitude where he or she wants to refrain from or do away with any kind of negative actions or negative karma, and only wants to engage into virtuous actions, into virtuous karma. But even there, he would like to engage into the virtuous karma that becomes a cause for liberation, and not one that is virtuous, but is just becoming a cause for another samsaric state. So he wants to do away with any kind of actions that cause samsara, and instead engage into virtuous actions that are a cause for liberation. So with this kind of attitude, the actual practice such a person of middle scope is engaging in is the three higher trainings. And in order to be able to engage in the three higher trainings, the person needs to understand certain topics. So a person of the middle scope would engage into understanding the Four Noble Truths, the 12 links of dependent arising, and by understanding these would then be able to practice the three higher trainings. And the actual goal of all of that, the result that is longed for, is then liberation. So,
this that the next Kibu Chimbus Legia, Kibu Chimbus said the day that Randin do the Ninjung Samba, the Deja Gundula, Inshila Lab, then they are not Jungla Lab, the Deja Lamne, Labasungi Nyamni, Lam Labasungi Nyamni, do see Apashi was sharing to do, Kibu Dings. That the Samba, Nanazo Samba, the Shivuji Gotan to Jerva, so some the Shivuji Gotan to be on. 요던 투도 다 가르쳐서는 랑 찍으셔도 내려 상담은 지금인도 타입에 마겐스면 되다 땅 안쪽 간에서 개와라 토마메가 시사래 근데 야라 종이 딘시도도 장로도 개와라 토마메가 시사래 개와레를 라라 소스로 파마도도 거든 좀 되게 시사 사마 시사 반드시 내지 시도고야다 다 되니 신은 다 되다 진진 뭐다 거든지 파마 제베 값도 거든 가서 시 파마 매제베 값라 거든 가서 시 버려 전다 소스 네 가서라다 조심전 디다기 거든라 때네 다다 초대 봐 근데 지여대 봐죠
Pamagene accounting categories, Pamagene on correct.
파마 마제베 값라 거든 가서 짱타네 파마 제베 값라 거든 가서 짱타네 나라도 미지 되게 나올 상담이 하고 뭐 되게 상담제 되네 타입의 심제 대다 탐제 되네 대화다 대외교단 대바로 교지 동네다 동네기 교단 차오래 교지 상담인데 참바다 인지 미버 때도 때는 공연데 뭐 기부 첨부서 차는고요.
So we had here the person that is for his or her own benefit developing this mind of definite emergence, or the mind of renunciation, that renounces or samsara, or wants to emerge from samsara and enter into liberation. This person is for one's own benefit, for one's own development, thinking about the Four Noble Truths, the 12 links to Dependent Horizon, and so forth. And on that basis is then engaging into the 3 higher trainings. So such a person is a person of the middle scope. This all this reflection, all this understanding, all this training is for the sake of liberating yourself out of this unbearable suffering of samsara. So a person of the great scope has a complete transformation of mind. A person of the great scope says all of that to be done for you, yourself only, is not sufficient, is not even suitable. Yeah, actually, there is this limitless other sentient beings, and what needs to be established, what needs to be accomplished, is the liberation of all those limitless sentient beings, because their situation is exactly the same. Yeah, so it is impossible to simply do this only for yourself. You need to do this for everybody else. You need to bring them into your scope of action. And so to get this kind of big transformation of your attitude, your view on the world, you would first of all have to think about how you yourself have gone through endless rebirths, how you had no beginning in your rebirth, innumerable rebirths. And all of these were functioning on the basis of the 12 links. You went through all these different stages, and so from one birth to another. So within the 12 links, you can understand how rebirth functions, how it produces a new rebirth, and so forth. So along that line, you will understand how you will have had endless rebirth in the past. So within that, you have in every life encountered all many other sentient beings, and through endless lives, beginning this life, you have encountered all limitless sentient beings in one way or another, and not only once, but many times. And in this way, you reflect on the kindness of all these sentient beings. So there were those lives where they were actually acting as your parents, as your mother, as your father, and in that they were incredibly kind to you. They were giving great kindness and care to you in these situations. But you also reflect on that also in other lives. Sentient beings were also in myriads of other ways kind to you and helpful for you, even without being your parents in their lives. So in this way, you are having this outlook on all sentient beings as being very kind, very close, and on that basis, you generate a wish that may all these kind sentient beings possess happiness and the causes of happiness. May all these sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Yeah? So with that attitude, then you do practices.
말아도 세딜라 심발로 치매 디기 전도 년경기 강사시 다 전다 디 치매 저 치매게 디기 전도 년 엔데지 용알라 다 최냠니 지겐지 여러와 기부 중고제 기본 딘사데 코알라 심발로 하르베게 대원데 타바토베 규두겐실라 기분이 다 기부 침부스라데 타 예베 심제 동해 규단자라 규단자발라 점되다 전되다 나 전되게 300군도 라네 대셔도 탐제kimber 제부 탐제kimber 두개게 다 냠니 제겐지라 기부 침부스잖아 하이 두스카라 제게라 나나다 기부 숨부디나 가로나 추기도 민도 따져야
So such a being, therefore, here would generate love and compassion and the body mind. So all of this with regard to all sentient beings. And in this way, this person would become capable to engage into all the vast, huge trainings of the sons or the children of the conquerors, the bodhisattvas. So that would be what a being of the great scope would do, this kind of attitude and this kind of practice. So in a nutshell, if you have somebody who is turning away from this life and is replacing his interest in this life by interest in future lives and is working towards the happiness of future lives in order to bring this about, engages into practices, is a being of the small scope. If you have somebody who turns away from samsara completely and is actually aiming at a liberation and the happiness and the bliss that is experienced in liberation, and for that goal is engaging into practices, is a being of the middling scope. And if you are, if there's somebody who actually wants to relate to all the limitless sentient beings and wants to liberate all these sentient beings, wants to be a refuge for all these sentient beings, wants to lead all these sentient beings into highest bliss and so forth. And in order to be able to do that is aiming at the state of omniscience, of Buddhahood. And in order to attain that, engages into practices. That's a person of the great scope. And understanding that, we then have to check ourselves, so which of these three are we? Have we entered any of these categories? If so, which?
이 동네라 직시다네 미세바데 미세데 방기야다 그 동네 되네질 셰네다 지 미치게 다 가르쳐서 어 계시 미세바이나 가냐 손데 깨발랑 바이나 녀손데 깨발랑 바이나 녀손 동네 다 타메바 되게 되게 용고레스 이네 가수 롱트 그랬네 제가 녀손도 미기에 쳐도 되는가 미세기메스 예스치기 예스 미세바이나 내가 코알라 야네 양도 코알라다 코알라 타야 급준 라게 말했어 저는 뭐 코알라 김에 쳐봐 냠데 그랬어 나 코알라 타르고 그랬어 제가 코알라 타야 그 된다라 나 소셔도 봉이 있어 미세가 소셔도 봉이 있어 두스 봉이야 야, 지금 미치게다. 지금 미세만은 미디 나랑게 맞춰봐 같이 쳐야 돼. 파 같이 쳐야 돼. 파만 미치베 까베 까라 나랑라 팬도 같이 줘야 돼. 아직 나랑게 류디다. 파르베 류디 집어치기를 봤어. 나 생기세나 날 강에 같이 해야 돼. 파르베 세나 네 세나 간데 답게라 강에 같이 해야 돼. 너희가 대원도 받지 말아 봐. 너희가 동행민도 받지 말아 봤어. 아자 따뜻 남녀 롱게 말했어. 난 지부 터지 김도 고만 타비에 그 되는 얘기 가사치 전죽선 되는 얘기 그 가사치 된대치기 셴라 알레베 소치야다 파셔서 차워서 전에 싸우는 지금 말했어. 진짜 도서를 싸운다. 그 소주 찍거나 기시기도 이놈의 300개 넘바가 누가 치중 15씩 해가지고도 어디 기부 충분히 첨부해서 누가 300개 받는 누구 누구야?
So, for example, somebody might say, I'm not killing a human being. I'm not going to kill another person, another human being, because if I kill somebody else, another person, then I might be apprehended by the police. I will end up in prison, and this is really, really nasty, and I do not want to go through this kind of suffering. I don't want to be imprisoned. I would not be able to stand that. I will therefore not kill a human being. I'm abandoning killing human beings with that motivation. But that's one personality. Then you would have another personality who says, like, I will not kill human beings, because if I kill human beings, the result of that will be that I will go to lower realms. This is the outcome of killing human beings, and the suffering there is simply unbearable, and I really don't want to experience that. And in order to not experience that, I'm giving up on killing human beings. And the third person is saying, I'm not killing human beings because if I kill human beings, this will be in a state of mind that is keeping me in samsara, and I will not be able to go beyond samsara. If this is something that is completely binding me into samsara, I will have to take rebirth within samsara, I will stay within samsara, when actually I want to get out of here. I want to get liberated. So I'm abandoning killing human beings. And yet another person is saying, so that person here, that human being here, has been to me limitless times mother, limitless times father, has brought to me all kind of benefit and support in many ways, even without being mother and father in past lives. With regard to my body and my life, it's very dear to me, and I have all kind of experiences of pain and joy with this body, and so this body is very vulnerable and so forth. The same is true for the other's body. Also, the other person has exactly such a body like myself. So this kind of being embodied and being alive because of the body being alive and so forth is the same for the other person and for myself. And the other person, just like myself, wishes for happiness, does not want suffering and so forth. So this is exactly the same like with myself. So all of this, taking all of this in consideration, then you say it is completely unsuitable that I'm killing that person that is so strongly related to me. Instead, I actually want to be a protection for that person. I want to benefit that person. I want to actually attain the state of complete omniscience, so I'll be completely capable of serving this other person. So we'll definitely not kill another being, abandoning killing human beings. So that's very different attitudes with exactly the same act. The act is that you are not killing a human being, but the attitude behind that is very, very different. So if you are checking through these descriptions here, or this analogies or these examples here, then from there you can very clearly understand what is a being of the small scope, of the middle scope, and of the great scope.
Jamro de Kaisana, Nyasung Dungele Kaviak Dondola, Sangele Keps Shoes Janet. Right? Sange Gindusuma Keps Chia, the Nyasung Dungele Kaviak Dondola, Nyasung Dungen Yomoga Tendala. Michigi, Hoi Dungen Yomoga Tendala, Keps Sange Chegindusuma Keps Brother Chibacha. You know, Dungedi, Hoi to message. Chigi. Jobson Roy the Chibarade, Jobson Roy the Kunu Kandish Tona Chicata, Taye, the Senji Chiga Malibit. Yetanja Dungeli Javiak Tundala. Japanko Jobson Chu says Chibarade, Mineyanko, Sigdi, Kundulang, Kunung, Rimbatela Chavati Judo. Those in the Kibuchun Chambers, those are Yachi.
In the same way, we can think about the situation of going for refuge. So first you have somebody who looks for a protection or a refuge with regard to the suffering of the lower realms. Yeah, so it looks for a protection or a refuge such that he or she would not have to experience the suffering of the lower realms, and out of that wish and or need for a protection goes for refuge to the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are going to be the same in each of the situations that we're going through. So also this person here that is simply doesn't want to experience the suffering of the lower realms goes for refuge to the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Another person is not just concerned with the suffering of the lower realms, but with the suffering that is included in all of samsara. Doesn't want to experience that, wants a refuge, a protection with regard to that, and goes for refuge to the very same Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Yeah? In order to have a protection or a refuge with regard to the suffering of samsara. And the third person is engaging into going for refuge for the sake of all sentient beings, not leaving one out, yeah, including all sentient beings. And is doing so because this person wants to actually himself become a protection for all these sentient beings. Yeah, wants to protect all those sentient beings from suffering, and in order to attain his goal, goes for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So we see that they're actually going for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The refuge jewels, for example, are exactly the same. There's always Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The difference is coming from the attitude or what you're feeling, why you're going for refuge, what is your motivation. Yeah. Geshe feels like somebody has a question. Somebody has a question? Somebody has raised his or her hand, and so Geshe felt like maybe somebody had a question. No.
Okay. That gibu se jige gibu chung de chembo sa de tanya de yang so jig nga ga na la len wi sa de sang ga na la ne yine yang da de ne riba ra gibe shaba ina da joji adisha ge gibu sung ga tanya de ze de ne da lama tsonga ba chimbe de ne lamri hamja na de gibu sung sa de tanya du sa le ne za je yong ba le so
da die hago so kai gibu sung tong sanga jeba karioris
기부숭 세대기 민지 기부숭 세 라야디 시자 용사치 상한 거 최나는 연구였어요.
네. 돈의 요모です.
말에 상한의 연구였다. 나 도전에 쳐봐이나 비용을 다 미세 용자의 기부숭 세 타야데 저기서 말했대. 네 조지 반데 아리샤 고점네 네 기부숭 세가 타야. 와. 얘네 전에든 라마송가가 람리도 사마나 기부숨세데 함제 두가 자네데 해지 기부숨게 남샤사데 직전에 이 조지 아디샤네마 기바치 레이스라.
So then Geshe says, we have now looked a little bit on this presentation of the three three types of persons. And Geshe feels like the actual basis for this is actually coming from secret mantra, yeah, from that part of the Mahayana that is called secret mantra. So there is maybe the basis for this division into small, middling, and great beings, or small, middling, and great scope beings, and maybe not so much in the actual sutra part. Yeah. So that being said, Geshe then feels like that Atisha he is actually starting here a tradition of using this terminology of small scope, middle scope, and great scope beings. And from there then, for example, Lama Tsongkhapa in his Lamrim Chenmo has picked this up, or the masters after Atisha picked up this model, and from there on used this terminology or this structure of talking about being of the small, middle, and great scope.
맞았어. 다 되네. 다 조직이 되네. 가수월다. 기우숨기 다 람들 바디 잠사데 별로 잠버렸어. 하고서 이 두주 간데지나 레슬라데 조지 별라 피디가라 별라 피디가라 아 데리다 알수거든 유럽 됐다 데려다 단달로 니동으로 봐 제가 최동 야매 시주 탐벨로라
직동 야매
시주 탐벨로라
십주 십주 담바
디디로라 데니 조지 아디샤 별라 페로다 다디 제수 별라 데니 아디샤 로쪽 가제레 주든데 쪽자레 제 쇼레 디기나로다 상에 두주디 디기나로 땅나 기타 와네 된 남샤데 용거리데 아니 두주를 제가 오든데 레스와 조지 페야게 두주도서 가디 페도 에슬라데 나 별을 페야데 쳐도 자미 시주 던데로 페바이나 다 조지 두주 디간 조지 아디샤스데 페바 다와
So this present text here that we are dealing with, the lamp on the path to enlightenment, which has this structure, or which introduces this idea of the three beings, was actually composed by Lama Atisha in Tibet. Yeah, so that's already remarkable. So it's not an Indian text; it's a text out of India, but out of Tibet. And so then we can ask ourselves: so what are we talking about in time? Yeah, when did this happen? So Lama Atisha came to Tibet in the year 1040, and then after that he stayed for many years in Tibet, and during that time he composed this text. So after 1040 this text was composed.
조주 공로 대보시라 패다스다 공로 패지 되게 공로 둔주도 봐 피면도 별라 패지 기 사이 어디에 신의 별라 패도와
야, 그 가세요?
패지 둔주도 봐 인사이 둔주 타마 인사이
둔주 타마
얘는 이랑 나 빼지나 따 주무스 나 제일 따셔와 대셔 둔주 가도 빼도 따셔.
So Geshe is mentioning that, of course, there's a great many details to the biography of Lama Atisha, and we might be looking at that. So right now he's just saying that Lama Atisha was maybe exactly 70 or around this age when he actually came to Tibet. But Geshe has to look up the exact age, but we will probably see that as he is teaching along.
아주 지켜는 마와바 갈리갈리 주나 다 루지 아디샹다 루지 마고 싶어지 요래 두스가는 제시 있겠네 지기도 돼 아이네 아주 때 맞죠 맞이나 다 알레 조지 아디샤 세디네 별라 페야 별라 마페 응원에 조지 아디샤 당부 길이 개별이 수충 오늘 충중 내가 내된 배거나 제 시규 상보 리바 야보 지금 시우지다 시제내서 가발라에 배 장애를 잡아 시부지 봐 도나 시부지 여대기지 와 근데 림바 다네드네 공로 주루도 앞에도 가나 시부지 캐바 차사네
주루
주루가 들어 시부지 캐바 차사다
로 주루가 인도
로 주루래도 가나
오케이
시부지 캐바 차사다 드드나 그 지네 현달라 지네 가리네 또 된데 또 지네 또 캐바 차네 와
Shumayimba. Shumayimba Rigne Chenda.
Shumayimba Rigne Dramanda Manda Kansa Katol, the Kabashan, the Netor. Dramanda, Chick Remutria, the Dick Jura, Tanga Dia Sorodo, then the Dramanda to Kabashan. She was like Fenga Chambu Dudu in the Chasa. Nina Chambo. But she was that river Yogo who get it, that Jawana Jawa part of the after check now page dengerwa 내 치르베기 중다도솔라 참이 쉬우지 개바샤서 어디 내자 다 공로 순주 니슈자고도 발레 순주도 발레는 신의 라도 중앙에서
순주
공로 순주도 발레 라도 중앙에서 이네 라도 중자다 신의 갈리갈리 다 최고도를 개바시고 전에 최게 시오차 산루야. 나 이 남다 시오지요. 나 이네 공부를 강가 셔야 되나 아니 되지 싶은 거 없습니다. 나드네 신에 아 장주 셈게 담바데 쉬어야 된다라더니 아 인도네시아유라 라마 실리바 자가 팬네 들어. 냐들라 로충인지 쉬어봐래.
나 주니.
로충인 쉬어봐래. 인도네시아유라. 나 자가는 인도네시아 파피드 가라 두지나라 자저 가라 다 죽순순 거래. 나 이네 인도네시아유라 때는 아 가인스나 야신 치규다 소모타규 쓰라와 소모타규 쓰라도 지진 잠바야나 고물루도 도 스케베 따웨 규바데다 근데 지진 장관에 파워 토면도 스케베 야신 치규 야신 치규도 소모타규기 근데 냠닝이 짐바토즈와 다돌라 도즈르 다 쪼다 전죽sem데 거더래 전죽sem데 이나마 지진 잠바야나 고물루도 다더니 시월하다 규베게 되네 아 다신양직 공로 충제 얘네 토메네 규바마 제 얘네 규레 명아 등교통로 충제 뭐도 저기 림바도 상마데 당아도 슈서도 조지반데 어디 말에 저 라마슬미 두네 누가 쉬네 로충니지 라마슬미 좀 쉬어자더니 장아자 땡땡네 신의 자알페네 자알다베 베베게 쪼다게 근데 또 니버를 전에 쉬어자든 두사 충화했어
지금 뭐라 카레 디에나 더부 카레 남다디 카레 차레리 용요레 요마레.
용마라 다 용마라 제단에 들라고 제단다 도서를 왔다 자가나 또 니버를 자오르면 신나신잖아 또 니버를 전에 쉬 드레시야 드네시네 별파 해야 깔아 쉬을 잡자드네 별파네 뭐다 던지 담바레스
Yeah, so Geshe actually just told me that he is going to just give now a very, very abbreviated life story of Lama Atisha, kind of completely just the corner dates, just a very short biography. I will not elaborate on this later because we probably don't have the time for that. So he just mentions the following. That Lama Atisha was actually originally born into a royal household, into the king's family. From a very young age, he was showing signs of having a very excellent, wonderful character and a very sharp mind, intelligence, and he showed interest in anything that you could possibly learn or master. So when he was 16 years old, he had already mastered all these different fields of knowledge or of mastery that you could engage kind of on a worldly basis. For example, medicine, for example, painting, like painting tankas and so forth. He had also studied and mastered the different tenets of the non-Buddhist schools. Yeah, so all this kind of philosophy also he had engaged. So that he was able to master all things shows what a strong, sharp mind he had, but also that he had from very young age on a great interest in all these kind of things, all these kind of sciences and all these kind of knowledges and so forth. Later on, only with 30 actually, he became ordained. Yeah? So until then he did studies without being ordained. Finally with 30 he became ordained. And after that he engaged into very strong Dharma studies and became an outstanding scholar of the Dharma. And finally, he developed a very strong interest in the Bodhi mind, which brought him to engage into a journey to Indonesia in order to meet the master Salimpa, with whom he studied for 12 years. So he went to Indonesia. This journey there, it is itself described how he went there by boat, and that this actually took him 13 months with a lot of different perils and catastrophes happening and so forth. So, but anyway, he went through this long journey to actually go to Indonesia, meet Salimpa. And once he was there, he actually stayed with Salimpa for 12 years, studied with him. And so it was about actually receiving certain lineages, yes, of the profound path of the view and the vast path of method. So all of these he received through Seringpa. So this has to do with traditions or lineages that come through, like from Manjushri to Nagarjuna and so forth, and then also others that came from the protector Maitreya, and then there goes Asanga. So these kind of lineages he wanted to have, and he got them. The point was that Selingpa would have all of these, so he went there in order to receive these transmissions, and for this he stayed 12 years, and in all of this he was especially interested in the body mind itself and the lineages concerning the body mind. And so what he received here was, for example, the body mind method for generating the body mind of exchanging self and others, and also other lineages that are connected to both the vast and the profound. And after 12 years, he had really kind of received everything that Selingpa could teach him, and he returned to India. And then in India, he became famous and an outstanding teacher and a reference point, such that he was like a second Buddha, the second teacher, the second Buddha of his age. So he would have been in his time in India like His Holiness the Dalai Lama is today. So he was the kind of the Gyalpo Rinpoche, the Dalai Lama of his day, if you like. And then finally he actually went to Tibet.
다 별아드니 배 가서 기시부 차대 요래 당아마 천지 시오초다 로베베만 주네다 된대기 뒤즈네 배 지게 킬로 추송 된 좀네 상계기 땜바도 시우 야고저 다르데 이네드네 리바 랑가 다 뒤즈 로인도 그나 된 냠치지 네 파라데라 별 개보 랑당방 세지 두자 시우 중요해 이게 배쳐 배드 매버서 로 둔주진지 나와래 내 rab중에 매버서 참마 매버서 저와 내 딘데제 달랑다마 매버 차베 제라 딘데스타 상기담바 야테스티 야고 차윤도가 야고 설치잖아 드디 냐 자하나라 드니 최샤마신 고르탄에 마고레 드니 다드다 에 자나네레 네 하샹단치 다마라들레 두저다 벽 나와라 되니 딱 캐차고 15시간 차대도 두지씩 나와라 되니 하나만 전주오다 라람 다 25니기 이 조지반다 아디샤 답에시 권니기 답에 다 15시 깔에 겹자 되니 깔에 겹도 로치니드네 말이 스탑로 로첩주 중간 나와 깔에 겹자 되니 조선 세메땅 되니 두스탄에 되니 깔에 겹자 되니 타마 난 저희 아디샤든 두스가 밴드슈도에 중제 는 별라 는 살라마 전주에게 예송이 말해 딱 전주에게 된 벽이 개보차대요 들이 되게 좋게 개보 뭐다 되네 차대가나 되네 딱 나라가 상기기 땜발라 냠자 시부지 친제 대여바 되게 참아야 쉬네 딱 그냥 나 별로 때 사부 시부지 나라지 쉬어 가면서 전다 상기기 땜바 지 람냐는기 지당 림바 와 상기기 땜바 지 나베나 치기 고주네 탈순죽 대부 상기 고마 마토가 파가 랑게 리바치 나도서래 치발라 편야지 미 참아라 편다 줘야지 미 참에가 노동 써야지 어디 내지기 다 쳐지 나라 치세네 다 쉬네 어디 되니 야 레라보치 나라 치세네 어디 this 나스다.
So as Atisha then came to Tibet, then as was said before, in Tibet was actually the place where he composed this very text here, the path on the lamp on the path to enlightenment. And so what happened is actually that he was invited by the Dharma king Geshe, and actually there were two involved here, Geshe and Jamphel, to come to Tibet because the Dharma there was in a deplorable state, such that the Dharma had already been spread much earlier, hundreds of years earlier, to Tibet by the great Abbot Shadarakshita and by the great tantric adept Padmasambhava. And so at that time, the Dharma was there, was spread and purely, and then it started to degenerate. And what exactly especially happened is that at one point there was a Tibetan king, Langdharma, who harmed the Dharma greatly and destroyed a lot of dharmas, such that there was actually no longer ordination possible. Even the ordination part of the Dharma was no longer possible. So there was no new ordinations going on and so forth. So anyway, in many ways, the Dharma was harmed here by this King Langdharma. And then after his reign ended, or after he was no longer in power, no longer around, then the situation got a little bit better. So the Dharma was again spreading and the Dharma was practiced and so forth. But what happened is that out of India, there were all kind of people or self-styled masters coming in. They were teaching all kind of things which were not completely accurate or their own views and so forth. And also out of China, they were coming Buddhists into Tibet, and they were spreading ideas like the one of Pasha Mahayana and so forth. So in the end, the Dharma was in an unstable state, or an impure state, or in a deplorable state. So observing this, these Dharma kings, Zhangzhou and Yeshe made great efforts to get an outstanding practitioner and scholar, yogi, from India to Tibet. So they made effort for 14-15 years and also made a huge offering. So they invested a lot of money into this project in many different ways. One of them was making a huge offering to Atisha and so forth. And all of this in order to bring Jobo Atisha to Tibet. So actually there were kings of Tibet, like in Tibet, but not over all of Tibet. There were kings over a certain area which is called Do. So in this area there were kings, and to this area they invited Lama Atisha. And so when Lama Atisha then finally actually came, accepted the invitation, then the Dharma king said to him, I'm not asking you to give vast, in detail presentations of the Dharma. What we need right now is a presentation of the Dharma that is arraying or kind of putting in order all these different Dharma teachings, such that they become a path that is practiced by a single person, starting from right now, going through all the different stages through a certain sequence, up to complete enlightenment, to omniscience. So such a teaching we would need. We would need a teaching that is really kind of benefiting everybody here, that everybody can have access to this, can use this, that there can be a great harvest amongst the people with regard to such Dharma teachings. And also, to some extent, I'm asking for a teaching that is easy to understand. Yeah? And as a reaction to this kind of request, Lama Atisha was then composing the very text in front of us, the Lamb on the Path to Enlightenment.
George Atisha lamri kibu sungi lang riba nyamni che ta tudu chi nyamni nyamsla te bo lojon che te bo samlo tang ya la le la bo diriji gi tam tambone chu sunroji singen de le la bo sunroji la ro wodan de chene tam do yang za yongzo de de be lang riba wo diriji be sunres wa.
So this very text here then is actually the root for the lamrim chenmo of Lama Tsongkhapa. So Geshe expects that we all have probably already teachings on the lamrim chenmo, have heard many times about the lamrim chenmo, and so the actual root for this presentation of Lama Tsongkhapa in the lamrim chenmo of all these practices as grouped together for a person of the small scope and the middle scope and the great scope has its root right here in this lamrim text by Lama Atisha, the Lamp on the Path to Enlightenment. Yeah? So this being the root text for such a crucial text like the Lamrim General that has many volumes to it, we need to understand how this text here of Lama Atisha, being the root for all of that, is also outstandingly important and a really crucial text.
Ah, yeah. 당연히 드라만 고쪽인다스. 야가르게도 시도가 부티파타 파디파 베게도 장주란게 드라마 시자와. 라 시자라스. 대양 부디스 나 남겨가서 땀 망고질라고 야로. 땀 부디스나 장주라고 야. 되다. 라 파타스는 람. 부디파타스라로 람. 되네 tradipasada drama 다디래 다도나잖아 전주 랑게 drama 스와 와다 전주 랑게 drama 사조다 디 마치디 마교와이나 가가르게도다 부디파타 바디파 슬라도 베기 게나잖아 전주 랑게 drama 시자라 스와
Yeah, and in this way we come to the actual text, and let me see what you have in English. Okay, so the text that we are using here, it starts here with the homage, but actually the text is like all the traditional texts is starting with just spelling out the name. So it says here in the language of India, Bodhipata Pradipa, and in the language of Tibet, Changjublangi Dharma. So anyway, the lamp on the path, in the language of England, the lamp on the path to enlightenment. This is kind of what we would have to add. So, and then here. Our commentary is just kind of splitting up this Sanskrit title, the Bodhipata Pradipa, into these parts of Tibetan. So the Bodhi means Changjub means enlightenment. Then Pata means the path or lam, and Pradipa means Dharma, or in other words, the lamp. Yeah, so this is these three parts in the Sanskrit. So therefore, from this we get the title in English, The Lamp on the Path to Enlightenment.
Ah, yeah, that is it. That carries a lot. Pangbe yunde da tobe yunde, sirwa. Pangdogi danyi jange sangye yishi ni changshu usishane. Ta changshu usir kandeji lagu yare, sirwa. Pangba tarshimba, toba tarshimba, sirwa. Dindegi danyi jange sangye yishi, sirwa. Sangye yishi isla wa changshu usira ro yishi ni changshu res ta dela ya driver chide ya de changshu de dribu changshu de tabege ya driver chide tane lam dela den sachon lam ngas chene wo de de gran shi sever chige sever chebaro deda dene sacho da lam nga ge jodan chiyo te ma do ba da 또 마토베치 되어봐 몽베 딥시 되어봐 이내양 것이 되라 로버슈 되어봐 것이 되라 태송이어봐 워드네기 때 멀리봐 데기 미바데 데데 하고서 마도바데 마리바데체 로버토 바데 로바슈로 때 캐만한 것으로 대 군대 꾸었다면이지 것이 되라 이내면은 또 태송사대인 게 태송 숨쉬기도 와 뭐든지 민법 말려봐 싸우러셔 차네 오라 땡지들 트레메스 라고 달라 트레메스 준zel라 드리지 갈라고요 나 땡지 땡지 임베 데라데네 chanju langue tremes generalabares.
So the commentary is then talking a bit about these different parts. So the first one was Bodhi, or in other words, enlightenment. So it says here, enlightenment is referring to the transcendental wisdom of a Buddha that possesses the nature of the abandonments and realization. So the completion or the culmination of all abandonments and the culmination of all realizations within a Buddha's exalted wisdom. That kind of exalted wisdom is expressed here as being enlightenment or Bodhi. And then further on it says, because this very text here is illuminating or making clear all the different levels that are leading to that enlightenment. So this is what leads there is the 10 bhumis, or in other words, you could also say the 5 paths. All of that is leading to that state of bodhi, of enlightenment. So in order what brings about the clarification of the nature of these different bhumis or grounds, or the different paths and so forth, is this lamp. So this illumination, or this clarifying, this illuminating these different paths and grounds is done by this lamp on the path. And further on also, this is called a lamp on the path because it is a light that is clearing away the darkness that is either coming from not realizing, not understanding these causes to enlightenment, these paths to enlightenment, these grounds that lead to enlightenment, these bhumis, or wrongly understanding, having a misunderstanding about them, or clearing away the darkness of having a two-pointed mind, a doubt. Is that actually a cause for enlightenment or not, and so forth. So all these kind of different states. So on the one hand, this is an ignorance. It doesn't realize, well, like not knowing. It doesn't know about the causes, the paths, the grounds that are leading to enlightenment, or a wrong consciousness. It has a wrong understanding about what leads to enlightenment, or a doubt that is also stopping you from actually practicing, a doubt with regard to these paths and grounds. So all this kind of darkness, all this kind of obscuration is cleared away by this present commentary, and so therefore it is referred to as being a lamp on the path to enlightenment. And then further on, the commentary raises the question, what about this, what we just said, that the exalted wisdom of the Buddha is called enlightenment. So why is that? So what this is actually about in the Tibetan is the word for enlightenment being Jang Chup. So maybe you heard about that. So the point is that this has 2 syllables. And so there's a kind of, if you like, an etymological explanation of that. So this Jang Chup being enlightenment or Bodhi, why is it called Jang Chup? So the Jang actually is a syllable that is expressing a purification, that you have purified or gotten rid of something. So the Jang in Jang Chup is referring to that the 2 obscurations have been purified, have been eliminated without residue completely. Everything connected to the 2 obscurations has been purified. So and so far there is a Jang. And further on, there's a Chup in the sense of that there is a penetration, a complete mastery and understanding and knowledge of all the phenomena of as it is and how many there are. So this is kind of technical terms that is used for ultimate truth and conventional truth. So that as it is, that the phenomena that are as it is referring to ultimate truth, and the phenomena of the side of as many as there are is referring to the conventional truth. So both truth and any phenomenon in any of these 2 categories of ultimate truth or conventional truth are completely penetrated, understood, are realized So insofar there is this chuba. So there is this chang chub. Enlightenment is referring to the purification of anything without residue of the two obscurations, and the chub and chang chub is referring to a complete mastery or possession or penetration of all the phenomena of the ultimate and conventional.
What does the lams? There are lams laguyares, lams chanju lams, lams laguay junze cares, chanju chimbo, and Tanda shells or chanju sejiro. Oh, chanju chimbo, jabber cheage, shake the shoe, so not pace lam de imba in the lams labre,
And further on the the text, the commentary raises the question, so why are these 10 grounds or 5 paths, or you could also, when you talk about 10 grounds, you could talk about the 10 perfections and so forth. Why is that referred to as a path? Why do we use this word path, like road kind of thing? So these different stages and these different 5 paths and so forth are referred to as a path, like in our title, the lamp on the path to enlightenment, because they are kind of something by which you proceed or on which you proceed, such that it makes you approaching to the great enlightenment of the Buddha. So that you actually want to reach is actually reached by going through these different levels, these different bhumis and different paths, like the 5 paths, insofar as referred to like a road or something that is traveled or something that you walk along, like this is why it's called a path.
Sangi lama drogengi dela drogen sura che yamba ina tibu sungi lang nyan wiche na drogoro mato drose shena je yama langa je yama da langa dara re mato dili niba je yama da debu sangi goma tabu digu yuna tibu sungi lang to na drogoro tibu sungi lang de ta nganzo langa de pa sever shegen shadi yore remena shi remesra nganzo kaisa dunu na wunche na dukra law pacha doa ina ko ta de langa thamat ni du ya ba wo de du sange du je ge lam de ji bu sung ge lam swa wo de sa sha ba inda da o da tremes la ba.
And so in a nutshell it says here the path that has been treaded by all the Buddhas of the 3 times. So any Buddha in the past, present, and future is using this path, is proceeding to complete Buddhahood, or has proceeded to complete Buddhahood by way of this path. So this kind of path is clarified by this text here. So therefore, it is referred to as a lamp on the path to enlightenment. Yeah. So this is the meaning of the title actually. So the point is that if someone wants to approach to enlightenment, he will have to do that by way of going through the stages of the practices of the 3 beings, of the small, middle, and great scope. And whoever has been enlightened in the past has treaded right that path, because there is no other way to approach or to gain, to come to enlightenment apart from going through these stages of the small, middle, and great scope. And also the ones who are getting enlightened right now are doing exactly that, and anyone in the future will do exactly that. You need to go through these stages, through this path, as explained here in this text, of the small, and then based on that on the middle, and then finally the great being, in order to attain enlightenment. So this is definite, and that kind of path that is needed, is necessary to be treaded in order to get to enlightenment, is clarified by this lamp, which is this text here, which is this commentary. So we can imagine that we need to go in a dark night out, and we need to follow a certain kind of path. So we have kind of a flashlight. So this flashlight will actually clarify where is this path, which we have to follow so we don't get up in the wilderness or something like this. So in the same way, this text here is making clear, is illuminating what is this path of the three beings that you need to follow in order to get to enlightenment.
Oh yeah, then that there is also station is. Then can that mother give chung said the language Yaming told the caress a chick. Give drink Yaming so caress. Give chimber Yamin so caress. Give some said what the get chick share. That didn't Mother Dana della Chanju said the gesture, Chanju said, Chanju lam said the Keji Trema said the Keji Chanju Lang Trema said, without Rodan, that didn't the rest of Chisons. Then I to that Maopa Motine that to say, Dilla Duzu does Google is Duzu Garo Google does the Dilla. No, Roda 12. Dilla Chanazo Duzu does Google is a how was on?
Density.
Oh, July. That Lord de la Pages Hagmarista.
So Geshe is saying that this brings us to the end of today's session. We run out of time. So he just is saying what we have been talking about a little bit. We were talking a little bit about these three types of beings, small, middle, and great scope. What is their attitude, their motivation, their thinking, what kind of practices they're engaging in. We have also now looked a little bit on what's the meaning of a bodhi, of Jamphel, of enlightenment, actually. And we have looked at in what is expressed here when it says in the title that this text here is a lamp for the path, or on the path to enlightenment. So in what way is it a lamp? So so that's already quite some topics that we have looked at here today. So Geshe wants to say, as this text is actually talking in a specific way about all the different aspects of the path to enlightenment, obviously this is a text that is talking about a great many topics, and is therefore something that we will not be finishing tomorrow. So this is kind of a longer engagement. So Geshe is saying that most likely we will not be able to finish this text this year. Yeah, just talking about time or how long this will take. So Geshe is saying this because he wants to kind of engage you people in a discussion about how you want to do this text. Yeah, so you can either like any text can be taught in a short time. So Geshe can kind of squeeze it all into some few sessions and force it to be over within this year. Or you might want to have a long-term teaching, and then you can go into some detail and teach it kind of properly and so forth. Yeah, so that's something that you people need to talk about, or come to a conclusion if you want to have it finished in a certain amount of time, maybe within this year or something, or if you want to have continuous teachings into next year and so forth.
Okay,
okay, then we stop here for the day.